The void around Urieli Prime was a graveyard. Twisted metal spun in slow arcs, the corpses of ships drifting with frozen bodies trapped inside broken hulls. The smell of scorched ozone clung to the Resolute's recycled air, though the battle itself was still far beyond its armored skin. Every second, more wreckage joined the dark, glowing embers fading into silence. Captain Darius Kane stood rigid at the front of the bridge. He was a soldier carved from endurance and refusal, a man who had fought in too many campaigns where humanity had been declared extinct before the fight even began. His jaw was locked, eyes bloodshot, but there was no weakness in the way he gripped the command railing. Around him, his officers rattled off updates, their voices layered with panic yet forced steady by training. Indomitable lost. No lifeboats. Outer defense net collapsing. 3 wings reporting no ammunition. The truth was bitter. Humanity's last fleet was dying by inches, and no strategy left in Kane's mind could bend the outcome. Still, he refused to give the word to retreat because there was nowhere left to retreat to. Behind them lay Earth, scarred and rebuilding, and if this system fell, so would the cradle of humankind. On the main hollow screen, the Krith Dominion's swarm advanced like a living tide. Their vessels weren't ships in the human sense. They were vast creatures of fused bone and biomechanical flesh, wings that oozed ichor into vacuum, weapons grown from spines that pulsed with sickly light. Their tactics were as cruel as their design. Endless waves, suicidally thrown bodies that wrapped around human craft and dragged them screaming into nothingness. Kane's voice cut through the reports like a blade. No withdrawal. Not one step back. They will not take Earth. The crew nodded grimly. They believed him. Not because they thought victory was possible, but because their captain's defiance was the only thing left keeping fear from choking them. But Kane himself wasn't looking at the swarm. His gaze turned to the side screen where an encrypted feed flickered to life. The image sharpened and she appeared. Seleth. She wasn't human. That was obvious the moment she spoke, the moment she moved. Her skin shimmered faintly, traced with luminous sigils that pulsed like veins of fire. Her eyes were silver pools that reflected no light, only depth, as if they held entire galaxies. Her voice, even transmitted through faulty comms, resonated deeper than sound, brushing against the edges of thought itself. She had been captured months ago, torn from a disabled Krith skirmisher. Though captured was the wrong word, she had surrendered. A traitor to her kind, she claimed. And for those months, she had lived among humans, teaching them, warning them, helping them strike back against her people. She had earned their trust, but only just. Her warnings had never changed. I carry a weapon within me, a curse. My bloodline's final form. If I reveal it, no human survives. Not ally, not enemy. No one who witnesses it endures. Kane had never pressed the subject further. Until now, Seleth's silver gaze was heavy, almost sorrowful. Captain Kane, your fleets are breaking. The Dominion comes with the Broodmother. You cannot hold. I told you this from the beginning. Kane's fists tightened around the railing. His voice came low, fierce. Then tell me how we win. Her pause was long, as though she wrestled with chains inside herself. When she spoke again, her voice cracked with regret. There is only one way, me. But if I open that final form, if I unleash what I am, you and all you command will fall dead. No mind has ever borne it. Even my own kind perish if they look too long. The bridge went silent. Consoles hummed, sparks fizzed from a blown panel. Outside, alien fire streaked past the viewports. The crew looked at Kane, waiting for him to break, to despair. But he did not. He straightened slowly, the weight of the entire species in his shoulders, and stepped closer to the projection of Seleth. His voice was steel, unwavering. Then I'll die seeing you as you are. If that's what it takes, then let me die standing. But give me the chance to make it count. For a moment, something in Seleth's impossible eyes softened. She looked at him not as an alien to a human, not as traitor to commander, but as one soul to another. The warning was given. The choice was made. And in the heart of the dying fleet, humanity's fate began to turn. The attack began like a thunderclap in the void. The Krith swarm descended in perfect waves, their organic vessels cutting through space with the precision of predators. They moved like a school of sharks, thousands strong, each ship alive and eager to kill. Their formation wrapped around the human line, striking from angles the eye could barely follow. The Resolute shook as the first barrage hit. Biospines the size of towers tore against the shields, splattering corrosive fluids across the energy barrier. Sparks rained from ceiling panels, but Kane's voice cut through the chaos. "Return fire! Full batteries!" The crew obeyed, fingers flying over controls. Railguns spat tungsten slugs into the black, tearing through enemy hulls. Particle beams lanced across the swarm, reducing twisted wings and armored carapaces to drifting shrapnel. Human drones streaked outward like hornets, intercepting spore bombs before they could latch on to frigates. Yet it wasn't enough. For every alien vessel destroyed, 10 more appeared, climbing out of the abyss like a flood of nightmares. They swirled around the Resolute, gnashing claws and firing beams that burned holes through nearby destroyers. The bridge crew could hear the screams of dying ships over the commnet, voices sharp with panic before they dissolved into static. "Vanguard lost engines! Peregrine is breaking apart! God, they're still inside!" "Squadron Theta gone!" Each voice silenced was another blow to the fleet's heart. But Kane didn't let his voice falter. Close ranks. Tighten the shield overlap. "Hold them!" The humans fought like wolves pressed against a cliff. The smaller corvettes darted between cruisers, laying down covering fire. Carriers dumped their last reserves of interceptors, even knowing the little ships were outnumbered 100 to 1. Every pilot fought to the death and no one retreated. The swarm responded with terrifying unity. Alien craft split apart, spilling boarding organisms into the vacuum. These creatures, long, eel-like horrors with mouths ringed by teeth, latched onto human hulls and chewed through armor. Marines sealed into combat exosuits rushed to repel them, fighting battles in corridors as fire raged and air hissed into the void. Amid the carnage, Seleth stood in shadow near the tactical map. Her eyes closed, lips moving in whispers no human tongue could mimic. With every phrase, parts of the enemy formation faltered, their movements stuttering as though a hidden thread was cut. She was interfering with their hive mind, buying seconds here and there, disrupting their unity. But seconds were all she could give. When she opened her eyes, the silver glow reflected the sight no human dared name. Out there, sliding into real space with monstrous weight, came a shape that dwarfed fleets. The Brood Mother. It was not a ship. It was a living fortress. Kilometers long, its armored plates flexed with every breath. Weapons bristled like thorns, each one a cannon capable of splitting continents. At its core was a mouth, a gaping maw lined with rows of bioluminescent fangs. From deep within, a light began to burn, a weapon charging that could vaporize cities with a single strike. Every human on the bridge went silent as its shadow stretched across the stars. Seleth's voice was raw with something like grief. "That is my kin, my blood. You cannot imagine the destruction it carries." Kane felt his throat tighten, but he forced his mind into clarity. The Broodmother was the kind of monster that ended civilizations, the kind of presence that reduced resistance to myth. His people had seen extinction before, but never like this, and still he did not bow. He turned to Seleth. "We can't hold this line against that." "Not as we are." Her gaze flickered as though the thought itself cut her. "If I show you what I am, if I release my final form, it will not matter if the Broodmother falls. You will not live to see the victory." The bridge crew stiffened, many glancing toward Kane with fear in their eyes. Her warning was absolute. Humanity's chance at survival could cost their very lives in the act of witnessing it. But Kane met her gaze without hesitation. His voice was stripped of fear, carrying only steel. "Then let me see. If I must die, let it be watching you burn them all to ash." Seleth's hands trembled, the sigils on her skin glowing faintly brighter. For a moment she seemed almost human, hesitant, burdened, torn between fate and choice. Then the ship rocked again. The Broodmother's cannon flared, light building to apocalyptic levels. There was no more time. Kane shouted across the bridge, not as an order, but as a vow. "Do it, Seleth! Show me what no one else has survived." And in the silence that followed, the war shifted. The Resolute's bridge dimmed as if the ship itself recognized what was about to happen. Panels flickered, instruments glitched, and the hum of power cut in and out like a failing heartbeat. Every officer felt it. The air thickening, pressure mounting, as though a storm was building inside the sealed chamber. Seleth stepped forward, her bare feet silent against the steel floor. Her posture was rigid, but her eyes betrayed unease. A flicker of hesitation from a being who had never known fear until this moment. The sigils carved into her skin flared brighter, their glow seeping into the room, painting the bridge crew in ghostly light. "Stand back," she whispered, though her voice carried like thunder. "What comes next is not meant for mortal eyes." The crew obeyed instinctively, some stumbling as the deck vibrated. Kane alone remained at the center, his gaze locked on her, jaw tight with resolve. The transformation began slowly. At first her body shivered, not like flesh but like glass under strain. Cracks of light spiderwebbed across her skin, glowing fissures that pulsed with every heartbeat. Her bones seemed to stretch, her frame both expanding and collapsing until human shape no longer contained her. Then it accelerated. Seleth screamed, not in pain, but in release. Her skin shattered into fragments of light, peeling away to reveal something vast and alien beneath. A shockwave rippled through the bridge, knocking consoles askew and sending papers fluttering like snow. Her new form unfurled like a nightmare and a miracle at once. Wings of pure energy erupted from her back, vast arcs of starlight edged with shadow. Each wing flexed and split into dozens more, folding and refolding in geometries the human eye could barely process. The bridge crew clutched their heads, some crying out as their vision swam, unable to reconcile the shape before them. Her face fractured into countless eyes, silver, black, golden, violet, all blinking in perfect rhythm. Each one reflected different skies, different worlds, different galaxies. When those eyes turned toward the humans, their hearts thundered in their chests, convinced they had been laid bare to infinity. The air vibrated with her voice, layered 1,000-fold. "This is what you sought. My truth, my curse, my final form." Kane's knees threatened to buckle, but he forced himself to stand tall. His skin prickled as if his body wanted to peel apart. His ears bled from the harmonics of her speech. Yet still he whispered, "Magnificent." Seleth's wings stretched wider, and the Resolute systems failed one by one. Lights died, weapons powered down, the reactor whined under strain. It was as if her presence rewrote the laws of physics, forcing human technology to cower before her. Beyond the hull, the Krith swarm faltered. Entire enemy formations scattered, breaking ranks as though sensing a predator more terrible than themselves. Some vessels turned on each other in panic while others froze, drifting aimlessly. Their unity, their hive mind order, shattered in the face of Seleth's awakening. The broodmother roared. The sound didn't travel through space. It tore directly into the minds of every living being in the system. Soldiers screamed, civilians on hidden colonies collapsed, even battle-hardened admirals clutched their skulls. The colossal beast recognized Seleth not as an enemy but as kin, and it was afraid. The broodmother's maw glowed brighter, charging its planet-cracking cannon. Energy built to a crescendo, the weapon's radius expanding until it lit the void like a miniature sun. Seleth turned toward it, her wings folding inward, forming a shield of light around herself. Her 1,000 eyes narrowed, and the air around the Resolute crackled with impossible power. The bridge crew tried to shield their eyes, but the brilliance leaked through closed lids. Their minds filled with visions they couldn't understand, rivers of fire flowing through empty space, ancient cities carved into asteroid hearts, stars weeping blood. A chorus of alien voices whispered secrets no human language could carry. Kane alone held steady, though sweat soaked his collar and his breathing came sharp and ragged. He didn't resist the visions. He welcomed them, choosing to see her not as a curse, but as salvation. Then Seleth's voice thundered again, shaking the ship's very bones. "You dared bring the broodmother. Then you shall watch her fall." She launched herself into the void. With a single motion of her wings, she broke the laws of inertia. One instant she stood on the Resolute's bridge. The next she was outside, filling the black sky with her brilliance. Her form dwarfed frigates rivaled dreadnoughts. She stretched across the stars, wings sweeping through fleets as though brushing dust from a table. The first wave of Krith ships disintegrated instantly, torn apart by the sheer force of her presence. Hulls imploded, organisms shriveled to ash, weapons melted in silence. On the bridge, Kane gripped the railing, watching the impossible unfold. His crew wept or prayed or screamed, unable to process what their eyes delivered. But Kane whispered only one word, steady as iron. Seleth. The final form had been unleashed. Humanity's survival now balanced on what she would do with it. The first instant of Seleth's release was silence. An impossible hush, as though the void itself held its breath. Then reality screamed. Her wings of light slashed outward, arcs of radiant energy cutting through the swarm like scythes. Entire phalanxes of Krith ships were erased, not broken apart but obliterated, their matter stripped into vapor. The black canvas of space lit with 1,000 blossoms of fire, brief novas marking the deaths of ancient war beasts. Human ships seized the moment. The surviving frigates pivoted into gaps carved by Seleth's advance. Fighters swarmed like gnats around her blazing form, launching volleys of missiles at stunned Krith carriers. Kane's voice rang through the comnet, steady and commanding. "Don't waste it!" "Every shot counts. Push forward." The fleet rallied. For the first time in the war, humanity wasn't only enduring, it was advancing. But the broodmother was not idle. Her maw yawned wider, that star-bright cannon reaching its crescendo. With a soundless detonation, the weapon fired. A beam of annihilation erupted, wide enough to engulf a city, hot enough to peel the crust from worlds. Seleth didn't flinch. Her wings folded inward, crossing before her like a shield. The beam struck, and the universe convulsed. The light washed over her, burning, bending, trying to erase her existence. For long seconds, the stars vanished behind its radiance. On the Resolute's bridge, crew fell to their knees, convinced they had been blind forever. When vision returned, Seleth still floated, her wings cracked and trembling but unbroken. The broodmother's beam had failed to destroy her. Her voice thundered, layered with fury. "Your dominion ends here!" She surged forward, a comet of fire and shadow. Each beat of her wings sent shockwaves tearing through enemy ranks. Smaller vessels burst apart without resistance. The largest dreadnoughts crumpled, bones and steel folding as though pressed by invisible hands. The humans pressed the offensive. Destroyers running on fumes and patched hulls charged headlong into the swarm. One captain, voice broken with laughter, shouted across comms before ramming his crippled ship into a Krith cruiser, detonating both in a blaze of light. Pilots dove into suicidal strafes, carving paths for Seleth to strike deeper. Kane gripped the railing, watching in awe and terror. This wasn't battle, it was apocalypse. Seleth moved like a god unleashed, unmaking ships with gestures, burning fleets with her scream. But each strike left her more fractured. Pieces of her starlight body flaked away, scattering like ash into the void. "Captain," his XO whispered, voice trembling. "She's killing them." "But she's killing herself too." Kane didn't answer. His gaze was locked on Seleth, his throat tight with unspoken grief. He knew, and she knew. Every second she fought bought humanity life, but burned her own away. The broodmother unleashed another attack. Not a beam this time, but thousands of spore pods vomiting from its sides. They swarmed like locusts, each one packed with parasitic horrors. They streaked toward Seleth, trying to bury her brilliance under sheer numbers. She answered with a scream that shattered minds. The pods ruptured mid-flight, spilling molten ichor across the stars. Krith vessels faltered, their hive link unraveling in her wake. And then Seleth dove. Her wings folded, her form compressed into a spear of pure light. She hurtled straight for the broodmother's gaping maw. The Titan attempted to fire again, energy building too late. Seleth struck, piercing through its armored throat. The detonation shook the system. A second sun flared into existence, brighter than any dawn. The shockwave rattled the Resolute, sent smaller frigates tumbling end over end. Hull plating melted, sensors shorted, comms went dead. For one endless moment, every soul thought the universe itself was breaking. Then darkness. Silence. The broodmother was gone. Where it had loomed, only fragments drifted, chunks of armor, torn limbs, the dying echo of its roar. The swarm, leaderless, convulsed in chaos. Some scattered wildly into the void. Others self-destructed, overloaded by the psychic link's collapse. On the Resolute, the bridge erupted in cries. Some wept openly. Others cheered hoarsely, voices breaking with exhaustion. For the first time, they saw victory not as a distant dream, but a reality. Yet Kane didn't celebrate. His eyes remained fixed on the heart of the explosion. Amid the drifting wreckage floated Seleth. Her form was cracked through, light leaking in sputtering streams. Her wings, once endless, now tattered, fragments scattering into dust. She hung in the void like a candle guttering in the wind. Kane's hands tightened into fists. The battle might be turning, but the cost had only begun to reveal itself. The debris of the battlefield drifted silently around the Resolute. Fires smoldered in space like dying stars, and drifting wreckage of Krith vessels spun slowly in the void, some half consumed by Seleth's light. Humanity had survived the worst of the swarm, but the cost was written in every shattered hull and every exhausted human face. Captain Kane stood at the viewport, staring at the glowing fragments that had once been the broodmother. His crew, bleeding and trembling, cheered in relief, but he heard only the soft hiss of the void, the faint echo of Seleth's presence. She had saved them, yet she was now a being on the edge of dissolution, barely holding her form together. She floated before the ship, her vast wings fractured, shards of light flickering like dying embers. Her 1,000 eyes reflected the fleet in tiny mosaics, yet each gaze now carried the weight of exhaustion and mortality. Kane's heart clenched at the sight. The creature who had turned the tide of war was fading, unmade by the very power she had unleashed. Seleth, Kane whispered into the void. He stepped closer, gripping the railing with white-knuckled force. You saved us. You've done what no one else could. She tilted her fractured form toward him, a faint shimmer in the pieces of her that remained. Her voice came as a soft chorus now, fading and broken, yet it carried across the vacuum directly into his mind. You saw me, and yet you endure. That is more than any human has ever done. Kane swallowed hard, feeling a weight heavier than any warship's cannon recoil. I told you I'd face you as you are. I didn't expect this, but I'm still here. And I'm still standing? Because you made me see what's possible. Her fragmented eyes blinked, glimmers of starlight flowing through them. My existence was never meant to persist in this form. The energy required, the strain of being. I am dissolving. If I linger longer, I will become nothing entirely. But you, humans, you endure. That is your gift. He clenched his fists, desperation rising. Then don't go. Stay. We can find a way. We can help you. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved her fractured face. No, my path ends here. You do not need me. You will rebuild. You will thrive. You have the resilience of worlds in your veins. That is enough. That is why you matter. Kane's chest tightened, a mix of awe and grief. The reality was unbearable. The being who had become a living weapon of light and shadow, who had torn the broodmother apart, was slipping away because there was no body. No form that could survive what she had become. She was a force of nature, and even nature must rest. He took a step closer to the viewport, imagining he could reach through space to touch her. Then let me see you until the last moment, he said, voice low, steady, as if the declaration itself could hold her together. Let me witness what no human has ever survived. Let me carry your light with me. The light that remained in Seleth pulsed brighter, responding to his determination. It wasn't defiance, she had no strength left, but recognition, acknowledgement of humanity's indomitable will. In the briefest instant, her essence aligned with him, sharing knowledge, emotion, and sacrifice. The vision of galaxies, of worlds uncounted, passed through Kane's mind. Pain and beauty intertwined in ways humans had never conceived. Then, with a brilliant flare, the last shards of her final form scattered into the void. Pieces of starlight drifted across the battlefield, touching ships and crew alike. Where her fragments touched, wounds healed, systems reignited, and shattered hulls stabilized. It was a gift, her essence leaving life in place of the death she could not escape. Kane fell to his knees on the bridge, tears streaming unashamed. Around him, his crew stared at drifting light in awe and sorrow. Humanity had survived, but the cost of survival had been witnessing the death of something beyond comprehension. And yet, even in loss, Kane understood. This wasn't defeat. This was endurance. Humanity had fought the impossible, seen the unimaginable, and survived. Seleth's final act wasn't just destruction of the enemy. It was a testament to human courage and their right to live even when facing forces far beyond comprehension. He whispered into the silent void, words meant only for her. The battlefield around Urieli Prime fell eerily silent. Broken ships floated like husks in the black, the scattered remains of the Krith swarm glowing faintly as the last fires sputtered out. The broodmother's carcass, torn and lifeless, drifted away from the human line, leaving only drifting debris to mark its existence. Humanity's fleet was battered, stripped of half its ships, yet unbroken. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Kane stared into the void. The stars, once familiar and distant, now seemed charged with a new weight, a lingering presence that radiated across the system, the echo of Seleth's final form. She had vanished, her body destroyed, yet her energy remained, scattered like luminous seeds across the fleet. Every ship she had touched hummed with renewed power. Hull breaches sealed themselves, shields recharged, and engines sputtered back to life. Crew members who had been injured found strength returning, their fatigue lifted as if the light itself had infused their very being. Seleth's final act was not just destruction, it was creation. Life carried on in her absence. Kane moved through the bridge, greeting officers and pilots with quiet acknowledgement. There was celebration, yes, but also reverence. They had witnessed something no human or any being in recorded history had survived. Humanity had faced annihilation, stared into a force beyond comprehension, and endured. Yet Kane's eyes kept returning to the void where Seleth had disappeared. He imagined her shards of light drifting among the stars, spreading across the fleet, touching every human survivor. The reality of her sacrifice was heavy. She had given everything to ensure humanity's survival. She had been a weapon, a godlike being, and yet she had chosen humans over her own preservation. Weeks passed, but Kane never left the observation deck. Reports came in. Scattered pockets of Krith survivors were fleeing, their formations broken beyond repair. Colonies that had been under siege received aid, the remnants of Seleth's energy stabilizing their habitats, repairing infrastructure, even catalyzing food production and oxygen generation in devastated environments. Across communications channels, humans whispered her name in awe and gratitude. Some feared it, some revered it, and some simply remembered the brilliance they had witnessed. Historians would later record her as an unparalleled phenomenon, a living legend whose actions turned the tide of an interstellar war. Yet Kane knew the truth. She was more than legend. She was a friend, a mentor, and a being who had trusted humanity when it mattered most. Kane stood alone for long hours, remembering her voice, the layered tones of countless harmonics, the thousands of eyes reflecting entire galaxies. Even now he could almost hear her warning. No one survived seeing my final form. But he had survived. And he would carry the weight of what he had seen for the rest of his life. Orders came down from command. Humanity would reclaim lost systems, rebuild devastated fleets, and fortify colonies against future threats. Yet Kane knew something deeper had changed. Humanity was no longer simply surviving. It had proven that even against godlike enemies, it could endure, adapt, and rise. He walked through the fleet as it returned to normal operations, seeing the crew inspired. Pilots who had flown suicidal strafes now laughed, joked, and recounted their encounters with Seleth's radiant form. Engineers marveled at the inexplicable repairs that had occurred. Soldiers, once despairing, now trained with renewed vigor, infused with the knowledge that humanity could withstand the unimaginable. And yet, Kane never celebrated. He understood the cost. Humanity had been spared, yes, but only because of Seleth's sacrifice. He felt her presence in the scattered light drifting across the stars, and he whispered, as though speaking to her directly, "You said no one survives seeing you." "I did. I survived. And I'll carry your memory, your light, with me." In time, humanity rebuilt the war-ravaged systems. Colonies flourished where ruins had stood. Fleets grew stronger, tactics refined by the knowledge gleaned from observing an alien force beyond reckoning. Yet none forgot the lesson of Seleth's final form, that courage, compassion, and sacrifice, humanity's core strengths, could meet the impossible and endure. Kane, older now, would often stand on the observation deck at night, watching stars shift in the void. He would see traces of light, faint, almost imperceptible, and smile quietly, knowing it was her essence lingering, a gift that had changed the fate of an entire species. Even in her absence, her influence endured. Humanity carried her legacy in every ship, every rebuilt city, and every person who survived. Her sacrifice became a guiding force, a standard against which courage and endurance would forever be measured. And Kane knew this truth, etched into the marrow of his bones. Humanity had not just survived the Krith. Humanity had witnessed the impossible and emerged stronger. They had seen a godlike being and they lived. They endured. Seleth's final act was complete. She had vanished, but her fire would burn forever in the hearts of humans. Humanity's resilience, amplified by her sacrifice, would echo across the stars, a light no darkness could ever fully extinguish.